Late on Thursday, WWE announced they were streamlining their creative writing process for television and have consolidated both teams from Raw and SmackDown into one group, which was a fancy way of saying Bruce Pritchard, who's been heading up SmackDown since October, now oversees Raw as well, and Paul Heyman is out of a job. Heyman was first announced as the executive director of Raw just under a year ago in late June, along with Eric Bischoff becoming the executive director of SmackDown. Even with the excitement around Heyman getting such a prominent creative spot, which fans have wanted for the decade and a half since he was fired from the ECW revival in 2006, there was a heavy dose of speculative pessimism. We've been here multiple times before, where Heyman starts off well, but over time keeps butting heads with McMahon. Eventually, Vince finally decides he's had enough of Heyman's abrasive persona and gets rid of him. PW Insider, WrestleVotes, and WrestlingNews.co initially reported Heyman's removal from Raw was because of the show's record low ratings in recent months during the pandemic, and that someone needed to take the fall, just like Bischoff did for SmackDown's move to Fox last October. But the Wrestling Observer newsletter is now suggesting Heyman's firing was predestined, pandemic or not, and might have always been part of a larger plan. Apparently people in WWE were shocked it took this long. Everyone knew it was coming. Vince did not like Paul. Sports Illustrated is also reporting there wasn't one specific incident that led to McMahon finally getting rid of Heyman a third time, but rather a difference in philosophy that was magnified while working together so closely. Vince started 2020 with two other big projects, expanding NXT globally and relaunching the XFL, which were both scuppered by the global pandemic. This meant McMahon started focusing more in on Raw, growing impatient with Heyman's vision of pushing younger talent, even though he had initially agreed to Paul's 18 months or longer plan to get over new stars last June. Raw under Heyman was a long-term play. Fightful Select writes that Heyman did his best to push Drew McIntyre, Humberto Carrillo, Angel Garza, Buddy Murphy, and Apollo Crews, and that he was a driving force behind getting the Latino wrestlers to do lucha together. Some of these worked, like McIntyre and Murphy. Others, like Ricochet and Cedric Alexander, didn't, as McMahon repeatedly pulled the plug on them. Apparently there was even a joke going around backstage that back in 2004, Heyman built SmackDown around the SmackDown 6, but now, on 2020 Raw, he was building the brand around the SmackDown catering crew. As for the previous year, AOP, Andrade, Zelina Vega, Aleister Black, and Buddy Murphy would just hang out in catering as creative had nothing for them. Sports Illustrated adds that of the 10 currently active Raw wrestlers they spoke to, each one said they highly valued his guidance and they very much hope he'll still be at television to help critique their work. As WWE's statement says, they now intend to only use him as an on-screen character, probably in his previous role as Brock Lesnar's manager. That seems unlikely. Instead, those Paul Heyman guys and girls are reportedly very worried backstage, with McIntyre and the Street Profits considered safe, but everyone else, from Apollo Crews as US champion, Austin Theory joining the Seth Rollins faction, and Shayna Baszler, are very concerned. But in the shock and criticism of Heyman's removal, a major part of this story is being overlooked. Thanks for your support on Patreon, the Beast, Brock Taylor. It's too soon. Make no mistake about it, the Pritchard rise is an incredibly significant part of this story, as it doesn't just hint towards some larger backstage politicking over the last year, but also at what to expect from the new McMahon-Pritchard era WWE properly begins after Sunday's Backlash. Sports Illustrated described Pritchard, the often called yes man who will be replacing Heyman, as being able to present ideas to McMahon better than anyone else in creative. The article notes Heyman knows what fans want, but Bruce knows what Vince wants. And ultimately, McMahon is WWE's real audience, not us. Pritchard was one of Vince's right-hand men in WWE from 1987 all the way through until 2008. He launched his very successful Something to Wrestle With podcast in 2016, going into classic backstage WWE stories in depth, mostly still towing the company line. His work got him a a job back in WWE in February last year as Senior Vice President, where, at the time, PW Insider reported the plan will be for him to eventually become one of the top executives in the company. He would have presumably been involved in the hire of Heyman and Bischoff to oversee Raw and SmackDown last June as a result, potentially part of a larger Game of Thrones-style plot to replace them with himself. And the timing of his and McMahon's creative streamlining appears even more Machiavellian. WWE's Q2 Investors Report is next month, where Vince will have to answer questions about Raw's record low ratings. Just like the mass talent releases in April before the Q1 earnings call, how he fired his right and left hand people George Barrios and Michelle Wilson in January, a week before the Q4 call, and Bischoff being let go before last October's Q3 report, Vince has consistently had a sacrificial lamb to blame. It's almost like people are put in these positions with that strategy in mind ahead of time. If it works out, great. McMahon is the genius for putting them there. If it doesn't, McMahon has someone to blame. Sports Illustrated also points out that WWE programming is expected to see some short-term ratings gains, as lockdown easing could potentially allow live audiences soon. Just as Hulk Hogan and Triple H have done in the past, timing their returns with episodes they know will get a huge ratings bump regardless of their involvement, Vince and Pritchard could see this to receive false positive credit of turning the declining viewership around. What do you think about the backstage politicking in WWE? Let me know in the comments below, because I'll be replying to people from beyond the wall where my people live free and kneel to no McMahon. So to see what we have to look forward to with the Pritchard era of Raw, here's last night's episode of SmackDown in about 5 minutes that opened on someone throwing urine in someone's face. The show opened on the controversial Jeff Hardy and Sheamus contract signing that had been leaked earlier in the week. Leak being the operative word there. Furthering the whole junkie storyline, which is Sheamus's word of the day, the Celtic Warrior forced Hardy to take a urine test to prove Jeff hadn't been taking any pills or alcohol, which Hardy did so he could throw the urine into Sheamus's face. Meaning Sheamus never signed the contract, but that's not the only plot hole. After only just stating that results can take up to 24 hours to receive, a quick ad break later saw a doctor, who you can hire on Fiverr, let Sheamus know the results came back negative, even though he had nothing to test because all the sample urine was thrown into Sheamus's face. Thankfully, the rest of the episode was much better. Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura beat the New Day in a fine match next to get over the Artist Collective as new title challengers, with the Forgotten Sons' push seemingly being dropped following Jackson Riker's social media posts critiquing the Black Lives Matter movement, which Big E and Kofi Kingston neatly paid tribute to in their ring attire. The Black Lives Matter movement, that is, not Jackson Riker's tweets. After an awesome video package putting over how important the Intercontinental Championship is, Daniel Bryan took on AJ Styles in the tournament finals in an incredible pay-per-view level match that went through 3 commercial breaks, with the story throughout being Bryan's knee versus AJ's arm. The limbs they use in their finishing moves, the yes lock and the calf crusher. In the end, Bryan had AJ lined up for the running knee, but AJ countered, hitting Bryan directly with the Styles Clash before hitting the phenomenal forearm for the clean win, putting him over both strongly and decisively. This should have been the main event. Bayley and Sasha Banks celebrated their tag team titles win next, complete with balloons and an overexcited Bayley. The two cut the standard "we told you so" promo before they're interrupted by Bliss and Cross in person and the Iconics on the Tron, leading to Bliss and Cross beating up Bayley and Banks. Miz and Morrison attempted to debut a new song before it was interrupted by Braun Strowman's entrance for the main event. Strowman and Heavy Machinery versus Ziggler and Miz and Morrison in a 6-man tag. Yay, Tucker's back! It's a shame that wasn't made a bigger deal of. In a genius bit of booking, King Corbin appeared on the Tron and tried talking to Mandy Rose, saying she was fantasizing about being with him instead, which led to Otis immediately leaving the match to protect her. This achieved multiple things, furthering the Corbin-Otis feud. It's yet another moment where Otis has prioritized Mandy over Tucker, in case that feud ever happens. It puts Strowman and Tucker at a disadvantage in the match, and it mimics the Universal title handicap at Backlash, which was all completely undone when Otis strolled back out with Mandy for the hot tag and the win off a caterpillar onto Ziggler, which was fun, but ultimately didn't achieve anything and was a poor go-home angle for Backlash. So that was SmackDown in about 5 minutes. Let me know what you thought of the show in the comments. This was an okay episode, which built the feuds effectively, but it lacked a killer cliffhanger angle a go-home show needs. However, AJ versus Daniel Bryan was so good, the whole episode is elevated to a smacktastic 4 out of 5. What is going on in WWE? Watch Luke and Laurie discuss Paul Heyman's firing from Raw by clicking the WrestleTalk podcast on the right. And will we see a rated RKO reunion? Watch our Backlash predictions by clicking the video below that. And if you enjoy what we do here, you can follow me on Twitter at Ollie Davis and at WrestleTalk_TV. I've been Ollie Davis, and that was wrestling.